What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla MonsterVerse lore Q&A. In this series, I take your questions and comments about the lore and timeline of the MonsterVerse and answer them to the best of my ability. This is going to be concluding the ongoing discussion we've been having over the past few videos. We started out by discussing the difference between Dagon and Adam in the MonsterVerse, which one is canon, which one is relevant to the broader timeline, and is Dagon/Adam even related to Godzilla in the first place? We then continued by talking about if Dagon played any role in helping Godzilla stop King Ghidorah and what that might have looked like back in the day. And then in the last one, I discussed where was Godzilla when Dagon was being killed by MUTO Prime? Why wasn't Godzilla there to help him out? Today, we are going to be answering the final bit of this question, which originally came to us from Alder Lopez Castro 4928, by discussing how Godzilla would actually feel about other members of his kind. Does Godzilla even really care that Dagon was killed, or is that just no biggie to him? Is he only in it for himself? Let's get into it. This question once again comes to us from Alder Lopez Castro 4928, who originally asks if Dagon died before or after Ghidorah arrived on Earth and what role he might have played in that, as well as asking why Godzilla didn't help out with MUTO Prime, before finally stating maybe the Godzillas are loners. And so that's the thing we're going to look at today. Are the Godzillas loners? Literally the material we have at our disposal, it would seem yes, probably, considering Godzilla's alone in all of the movies. He doesn't really like working with others, does he? He's really anti-Kong anyways. All of the cave art of Godzilla in the past depicts him as the only Godzilla fighting. And of course, Dagon dies by himself. Godzilla's not there to help him out. But I don't think that's a very good depiction of the full story here. Godzilla's the only Godzilla we know of, and we do know Godzilla is capable of team-ups. First of all, Godzilla has teamed up with Mothra multiple times. They have a symbiotic relationship that goes back generations, showing Godzilla is capable of companionship. Godzilla fights alongside Mothra against King Ghidorah in the past and the present. There are two cave arts depicting Godzilla fighting alongside Mothra, although one of them is technically non-canon. Of course, in that same cave art that is canon, Godzilla's fighting what seems to be alongside Rodan. It kind of looks like Rodan's attacking Godzilla, but I think that Rodan is helping Godzilla out. Then of course, there's the broader lore, the backstories. So originally, one of the first great Titan wars happened because the Titans lived very closely with humanity. Some Titans did. The Protector Titans became beacons of hope for humanity, while the Destroyer Titans were things that they feared, but the Protectors would keep the Destroyers away. Until humans got a little too big for their britches and started to go to war with each other using their Titans in combat. This war caused major devastation, wiping out all of the original Earth civilizations and basically bringing the advanced civilizations that used to exist down to the Stone Ages, where they had to rebuild from there. At some point during all of this, King Ghidorah arrives on Earth and causes major devastation. Godzilla obviously has to fight Ghidorah on multiple occasions before sealing him away in Antarctica. Then it seems presumably afterward, this is when Dagon dies, by the way, after that Ghidorah situation, it seems presumably afterward, the Great Godzilla Kong War happens, as that seems to have occurred in the power vacuum left open in the ecosystem following the Great Titan War. As the ecosystem was finding a new balance, the Godzillas and Kongs started to fight over who was going to become the dominant species. Both of them had the capability of it, but who was it gonna be? This war wound up destroying Godzilla's species. The Godzilla Kong War seems to have absolutely annihilated them. We don't know much, but we know that Godzilla himself is afraid of, at the very least, the rival who was a Kong powerful enough to take him on back in the day. So it's clear that even our Godzilla struggled during all of this. We also know that some Godzillas, or Godzilla-like species, I should use Legendary's preferred terms, perished in this fight. Basically, as we understand it, it got down to the point where Godzilla was already a very, very rare species by the end of all of this. The Kongs, using their intelligence, were able to craft weapons out of the slain Godzillas that they had killed, and those weapons could help them kill more Godzillas. We don't really know much about how it resolved, but we know that some Kongs took residence on Skull Island, which became a safety haven for them on the surface world. It seemed that those Kongs did not go to the Hollow Earth. We don't quite know why, but they didn't like the Hollow Earth, or they stayed out of it. They migrated to Skull Island for a reason, and we know that Godzilla leaves Skull Island island alone. Maybe because he doesn't know about it, or maybe because he thought there was still enough Kongs on that island to kill him outright. Then, in the wake of all of this, it seems another war happened with the Great Apes, which are technically not the same species as the Kongs. This war was the one where Scar King saw an opportunity to conquer the surface world and led a tribe of Great Apes against Godzilla. As we learn in the Godzilla Kong novelization, Godzilla did not fight this war alone. There were other Godzilla-like creatures and other titans that fought alongside of him, and by the end of it, Godzilla was nearly killed. We learned that he was nearly killed. Now, I don't know if Shimo was involved in all of that. I'm not sure. I don't think Shimo was, but regardless, Godzilla is able to seal away Scar King's tribe in the subterranean realm, and it seems like that's that. Again, at some point during all of this, we don't actually know when, Dagon is killed, and so I'm just trying to paint the picture here that Godzillas did work together back in the day. And in fact, although it's cut from the movie, no longer canon, Godzilla vs. Kong almost depicted concept art of the Godzillas and the Kongs fighting together. Not just one Godzilla, but multiple Godzillas fighting together against an invading flying space Godzilla looking thing. So that was going to be a piece of canon evidence to say that the Godzillas were social enough to fight alongside each other. Unfortunately, that's cut from canon, so we don't actually really know much anymore. But I just want to paint the picture that there was a lot of times that the Godzillas fought alongside each other, and there was a lot of reasons why the species dwindled to the point where our Godzilla wound up being the last man standing. There's also a lot of speculation about, do the other Godzillas actually possess atomic breath? Of course, that GVK concept art showed they all do, but considering that cave art is cut from canon, and Dagon never uses the atomic breath, and now it seems that Godzilla is an offshoot of his own species, seems very likely that Godzilla himself is special from his kind. He might be the only one of his species capable of the atomic breath, the monster that ate a star, you know, he has that ability, and it's possible that the rest of his species does not. So maybe that's another reason why the Godzilla species fell so quickly, is that Godzilla is so powerful, but the rest of his kind wasn't as powerful. Alder mentions that maybe the Godzillas are loners. We don't actually know much in the MonsterVerse. We don't know how social Godzilla is. He doesn't seem to be very social. It doesn't seem like he's suffering from isolation. We know Kong is actively seeking out other members of his species. Godzilla has not yet shown any semblance of that. The only semblance of companionship Godzilla's shown is towards Mothra, who he has a symbiotic relationship with. That's it. Other than that, Godzilla's not really shown any loyalty to anybody. Even Kong, who goes out of his way to save Godzilla's life, Godzilla shows no allegiance to in Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. The only monster he's ever shown any sort of social companionship with is Mothra. Other than that, the only other thing we know Godzilla shows any level of companionship with is humanity. Godzilla has an ancient history with humanity. He was a protector of a human civilization. He was worshipped as a god by the humans in the Hollow Earth, who actually didn't start in the Hollow Earth. They were a surface civilization who sank into the Hollow Earth. But that surface civilization, that ancient civilization, they worshipped Godzilla. He lived in that temple. That was his home. He shows a strong connection to them. He remembers them fondly in Dominion. Serizawa has a connection with Godzilla. Godzilla has some sort of awareness of Ford Brody. Godzilla has some sort of awareness of Kate Randa, you know? Godzilla's got some level of kinship towards humanity. It's one of the reasons Godzilla maybe hasn't tipped the scales and declared war on the things that humans do that tip nature out of balance. Godzilla's got some loyalty to humanity. So we don't really know how Godzilla would respond to another member of his species. I believe Alan Henry, the actor who plays Kong and Scar King in The New Empire, has speculated that Godzilla would be incredibly aggressive towards other members of his species. I don't think that there's enough to say that yet. We don't really know. Greg Keyes, the author of a lot of the expanded MonsterVerse material, including the novelizations, has declined an answer out of legal obligation, so he simply cannot answer that. He can't answer questions on Godzilla species due to Toho's request that the MonsterVerse stop directly acknowledging the other members of Godzilla species, which I can explain why they might have done that in another video. If you guys have questions about it, comment below and let me know. The only thing we can really do is look back at Godzillas of the past, and Godzillas of the past have never actually interacted with another adult member of their species. In Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Godzilla immediately knows that Mechagodzilla's an imposter, so he goes to war with him. In Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 1993, Godzilla shows a very strange confusion towards Mechagodzilla, where he doesn't attack until already attacked and provoked. Those two instances kind of give us a glimpse on how Godzilla might react. Kind of similar in the Kiryu saga, Godzilla seems to recognize that there's something going on with Kiryu when Kiryu lands. He maybe can sense the bones of Godzilla 54 in there, and he responds like out of confusion until, you know, the battle begins. As far as with other members of Godzilla species, the only other thing we get is with the sons of Godzilla. The Showa Godzilla is kind of aggressive towards Minya. He does show up to defend Minya. He's called to Minya's position. He definitely protects him against Kamacuras, but then he immediately smacks Minya around with his tail, and is not the most caring father, showing multiple times that he's willing to downright abuse Minya, hit hit the child. But at the same time, Godzilla learns to care for Minya and goes out of his way to protect the child, even at sacrifice of his own better interests at the end of that movie. And then from that point on in the Showa series, Godzilla seems to be a protector of Minya. So it seems like Godzilla grows a strong bond with that character. In the Heisei series, Godzilla's incredibly defensive over his child. Godzilla seeks little Godzilla out, or Junior, or baby Godzilla. It's silly that they call him a different name in all the movies, so I'm just gonna call him Junior. Godzilla seeks Junior out, like, to no end in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 93, until he eventually finds him, in which case Godzilla's super excited and takes the kid out to sea. In Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, Godzilla's incredibly protective over Junior and goes out of his way, tries to anyways, go as far out of his way as possible to protect Junior from Space Godzilla. He's incredibly outraged when Junior's kidnapped by Space Godzilla. In Godzilla vs. Destroya, Godzilla is very protective over Junior and then incredibly enraged over the death of Junior, so Godzilla has a very strong parental instinct, we know. I would think in the MonsterVerse it would go very similar. I don't think we're ever going to get the chance to see Godzilla interact with another adult member of his species, and so the best we'll ever get is if they introduce the son of Godzilla, which, go check out some of my Supernova news and updates, seems like very well might happen in the next MonsterVerse movie. I'm thinking if we get a son of Godzilla in Supernova, I do think that's a huge possibility. I think Godzilla would be incredibly defensive, incredibly protective, and incredibly caring towards that child. I think Godzilla would be very caring towards that child. If Godzilla's somewhat protective and loyal to humanity, I think he would be even more protective and loyal to a member of his own species. I don't know why he cannot see that kind of kinship in Kong. I guess he's continuing that old hatred from the wars of the past, but I'm hoping in the future even that is over. You know, Godzilla seems to definitely outright respect Kong by the end of New Empire. They give each other a little buddy-buddy nod as if they're bros. So I think in the future, Godzilla will have a stronger bond with Kong. He'll definitely have that bond with Mothra. And if the son of Godzilla exists, I think Godzilla's going to be incredibly protective over it. And so I think Godzilla would be protective over Dagon too, if he knew Dagon was about to be killed, which I'm guessing he didn't know, so he wasn't there to protect Dagon. Thank you so much for the questions, I really appreciate it. If you've got any questions, remember, comment those down below. I'm happy to take them and answer them in future MonsterVerse lore Q&A episodes. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining us at channel member. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.